Dark rides are some of the best themed attractions in the entire world. These rides can take many different forms. Some use physical sets, while others are screen-based. Some follow a track, others are trackless. Some are shooters or thrill rides, while others are more straightforward. In this video, I will rank my top 25 favorite dark rides that I have personally ridden. And before starting, I want to note that I have not yet visited China, South Korea, or Australia, but I have visited every major park in North America, most major parks in Europe outside of Poland and Finland, and the major parks in the UAE and Japan. So I've ridden several fantastic dark rides over the years. I also want to note a few rides that I will and will not be including on this list. First, I would be willing to include roller coasters if the ride consisted of show scenes for at least half the experience. I will also consider water rides and thrill rides if at least half the ride consists of show scenes. There are a few I'll include in this list that may be controversial, but I'll explain my reasoning when they appear on the list. I will not be including haunted walkthroughs. I have a separate video on haunts if you're interested in that type of attraction. I also will not be including flat rides that are indoors. I also want to note that I did miss out on Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway by about a month, and Journey to the Center of the Earth was unfortunately under refurbishment when I visited Tokyo Disney Sea. Both those rides look amazing and likely would have made the list had I experienced them. So starting off this list, at number 25 is Lustiga Huset at Groenland. The only funhouse on this list, Lustiga Huset is special. This is a 6 to 7 minute long walkthrough loaded with gags, many of which would not be allowed in America. My favorites include the sliding staircase, the bouncing bridge where you can actually get airtime, the back-to-back combo of a spinning vortex and a barrel, which will have you falling over, and a fast slide at the end that can also send you airborne. Number 24, Pirates of the Caribbean at the Disney Parks. I have ridden every iteration of Pirates except the one in Shanghai. The four I've experienced are incredibly well-themed adventures through a bustling pirate town, and you have the infectious soundtrack. The sheer amount of animatronics is overwhelming, and the drops the ride features aren't super thrilling, but they're nice gravy. Number 23, Test Track at Epcot. This is among the weakest themed rides on this list in terms of sights, but the thrill component is so perfectly woven into the ride's theme that the ride still works. I prefer the old aesthetic to the futuristic Tron color palette, but the thrilling braking, handling, and barrier test sequences are what keep me coming back. Number 22, Mouse Out Chocolat at Phantasialand. This is a Toy Story Mania knockoff, and I actually hesitate to use the word knockoff since the ride system is identical, and the animation is just as high quality. You use a pastry shooter to take aim at mice. It's just as addictive as Toy Story, and I think it's a bit longer, but it does have a minor flaw. The respawning of targets was less random and had less of a delay on this one, so the most effective way to score was to spam the same location over and over again of the high value targets, even if it wasn't the most fun way to play the game. Number 21, Monsters Inc. Ride and Go Seek at Tokyo Disneyland. This is a unique twist on the shooting dark ride. Instead of using guns to kill monsters, this is Disney, not Universal. You use flashlights to illuminate monsters. That sounds pretty stupid, but it's pure goofy fun. Every single target hit resulted in a detailed animatronic responding in some way. In an age where many dark rides rely only on screens, it was refreshing to see such expansive physical sets. While I do wish the score was kept for some friendly competition, the interactivity of the attraction really shone, pun intended. The monsters are cartoonish enough for kids, and some targets are challenging enough to hit that there's some difficulty for older riders as well. Number 20, Pooh's Hunny Hunt at Tokyo Disneyland. What a fantastic trackless dark ride. The system is used to perfection on this ride, taking you past some impressive physical sets. I admittedly am not the biggest fan of Winnie the Pooh in terms of the IP, but this ride crushes the American versions because of the vastly improved ride system and detailed animatronics. Number 19, Flintstones Bedrock River Adventure at Warner Bros. World Abu Dhabi. The ride is about 5 minutes long, and there is not an inch of wasted space. You know how a lot of dark rides have scenery on one side and then dead space on the other? That doesn't happen on River Adventure. The ride is 360 degrees of sights. I had to ride multiple times just to catch all the figures and animatronics. The sets are all bright and colorful, based on an IP I enjoyed as a kid. And the ride does have a drop at the end. It's pretty modest in height, and it won't have you screaming yabba dabba doo or anything, but it does make for a nice finale. Number 18, Jurassic Park River Adventure at the Universal Parks. I was torn how to handle this ride. While the indoor section takes up less than half the ride, the outdoor section feels like a dark ride with the grand set pieces and dinosaurs. For that reason, I decided to include it. I love the giant animatronics and the progression from friendly to carnivorous dinos. And then the towering final drop is one of the best you can find at any water ride. Number 17, Justice League Warworld Attacks at Warner Bros. World Abu Dhabi. This is basically Universal's Spider-Man ride with the DC characters instead. The animation is very high quality, and the motion is perfectly synced. The one storytelling decision that differs here is that you're directly involved in the plot in the first half, but then you become just a spectator to a giant battle at the end of the ride. That didn't bother me too much because I'm a comic book nerd and I was enamored with the action I was seeing, but keep that in mind if that would bother you. Number 16, The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man at Islands of Adventure and Universal Studios Japan. There's a reason this is still one of the best dark rides in the world 20 years after it came out. The animation is crisp, the 3D is extremely effective, and the story is perfect. It gives you a tour of Spider-Man's iconic collection of villains while using auxiliary effects to simulate their powers. I just love the battle sequences on this ride. Number 15, Derren Brown's Ghost Train at Thorpe Park. I am not a big fan of VR and coasters, but it works extremely well for a horror-themed dark ride such as this. The headsets are extremely effective with their convincing visuals and audio. The latter really makes the ride freaky. Make sure not to spoil the ride for yourself. Not knowing how it works really adds to the fun, because there's a lot to this ride. It was much more involved than I expected, and that really added to the scare factor. What I will say is all the elements of the ride come together to make for one heck of a scary experience that I did not soon forget. Number 14, Men in Black Alien Attack at Universal Studios Florida. Most shooters have screens or cardboard targets, and even those with detailed sets usually have a clear target that sort of takes away from the immersion. On Men in Black, you get to shoot full-size 3D aliens pretty much anywhere. The sheer size of the sets and the amount of aliens makes this ride special. Plus, you have that neat section in the middle where you take aim at the other vehicle and try to get them to spin out uncontrollably. Number 13, Toy Story Mania at the Disney Parks. This is among the most addictive rides in the world. The ride feels like a supersized arcade game. The pop gun style shooting system is extremely rewarding, and the cartoonish graphics fit the ride perfectly. Plus, all the hidden targets in the ride really gives it some re-ride value. Number 12, Valhalla at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. This flume ride feels like the marriage of Splash Mountain and Epcot's Old Maelstrom ride. The visuals are spectacular, particularly the battle sequence in the middle, the water vortex, and fire effects. And you have not one, not two, but 3 thrilling drops that will absolutely drench you. The one downside to this ride, unless you view getting soaked as a downside, is that the story was very tricky to follow. But I was impressed by the visuals at all times, so I was able to look past that to an extent. Number 11, Symbolica at Efteling. This ride is visually stunning. From the facade, to the pre-show, to the ride itself, everything looked fantastic. The trackless dark ride passes extremely detailed sets, and you have 3 different tours you can choose from that will vary slightly from each other. The only reason this ride isn't higher is that the plot was a bit difficult for me to understand since I don't speak Dutch, but the impressive sights spoke for themselves. Number 10, Batman Night Flight at Warner Bros. World Abu Dhabi. This is a robotic arm dark ride similar to Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. The motion felt similar and just as wild, but I think Harry Potter is more refined. The transitions between scenes has a noticeable delay on this one, as you'll often stare at a black screen for a few seconds before the scene starts. And I found it weird that the story operated similarly to Justice League in that you're a direct participant in the first half, but just an observer in the second half. But like that ride, the visuals are fantastic, especially if you're a comic book fan such as myself and like seeing Batman take on the Joker. Number 9, Ani-Mayhem at Warner Bros. World Abu Dhabi. I go back and forth whether I prefer the physical sets of Men in Black or the arcade screens of Story Mania. Well, Ani-Mayhem offers both, and it thrives at both. Many scenes blend both these effects perfectly, so you can fire away at everything. I can't think of another dark ride that offers as many targets simultaneously. All the targets worked, and the theme works great for this ride as well. Number 8. Scooby-Doo Museum of Mysteries at Warner Bros. World Abu Dhabi. This is a superior version of Pooh's Hunny Hunt. For one, I am a much bigger fan of the Scooby-Doo IP. I grew up watching it. 2. I think there's more re-ride value to this attraction. Vehicles are dispatched in groups of 3, and at several points you split up like the gang does in Scooby-Doo to solve the mystery, and the sights will vary upon which vehicle you're in. And the finale brings the iconic hallway chase scene to life in a perfect showcase of the trackless ride system. Number 7. Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey at the Universal Parks. This robotic arm dark ride is the perfect blend of thrills and theming. The motion feels more like a flat ride than a dark ride, and I mean that as a compliment. It's really wild. And the visuals are spectacular as well. You have a mix of crisp screens and impressive physical sets. And unlike the aforementioned Batman Night Flight, the timing scene to scene is impeccable, and you truly are part of the story at all times. Number 6. Radiator Springs Racers at Disney California Adventure. This is a much improved version of Test Track. For one, the theming is far better. The facade is ornate, and the animatronics, both the size and motion of them, is top notch. 2. While the ride has a lower top speed than Test Track, the outdoor, high-speed section feels closer to a roller coaster with the drops, and the racing element really adds to the excitement. Number 5. Tower of Terror at the Disney Parks. More a drop tower than a dark ride, I thought Tower of Terror ultimately deserved a spot in this list because of how well themed it is. And on the Walt Disney World version in particular, you actually have a few dark ride scenes that take place outside the drop shaft. The scenes are perfectly creepy and set the tone for the wild drop sequence at the end of the ride. And that drop sequence is wonderful, offering some great sustained airtime and stomach-dropping sensations. Number 4. Avatar Flight of Passage at Disney's Animal Kingdom. If you haven't been able to tell, I usually prefer rides with physical sets, but Flight of Passage is the highest rated screen-based attraction on this list. The ride system is impeccable. It truly feels like you're riding a Banshee, and the motion is extreme enough that it caused my stomach to drop at a few points. The visuals are beautiful, and the music is exceptional. I've seen people come off this ride crying because of how immersive it is. Number 3. Indiana Jones Adventure at Tokyo Disney Sea and Disneyland. Based on my favorite film franchise of all time, Indiana Jones Adventure is a well-themed masterpiece. The detailed queue sets the story, and the ride is among the best in the world for the quality of its physical sets. The scale of the effects are truly mind-blowing, and the musical score complements those visuals perfectly. Plus, you also have the rough and tumble enhanced motion vehicles that turn this experience into a wild thrill ride. I think Tokyo's is slightly better themed, but the one in California has wilder motion, so I ultimately think they're equal. Number 2. Splash Mountain at the Disney Parks. My favorite log flume makes this list because of the long and detailed dark ride section. Between that infectious soundtrack, beautiful sets, and abundance of animatronics, Splash Mountain could stand alone as a dark ride, but I would be lying if I didn't say that the drops, particularly that climactic final one, give it an edge over the other dark rides in this list. I know this ride is getting rethemed, but as long as the quality of the animatronics and the sheer amount of them is maintained in the retheme, I think this ride will be just as good. And coming in at number 1 is Star Wars Rise of the Resistance at Disneyland and Disney's Hollywood Studios. This is the most immersive ride in the world. From the second you enter the queue line, you truly feel like you're transported to a different planet. Without going too deep into spoilers here, I have a separate review if you're interested in everything about this ride. The expansive set pieces, detailed animatronics, convincing effects, and trackless ride system make this ride special. I came off this ride with my mind blown and wanted to just keep getting back in line. So those are my top 25 favorite dark rides that I've ridden across the world. Have you been on any of these rides? What are your favorite dark rides? I would love to hear your thoughts about any of these rides down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate if you gave it a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.